Hello folks. Well, this time around we want to talk about Linux file paths. So how you specify the exact location of some file or directory that we want to work with. And I think we're all pretty used to this idea now from things such as URLs, where you have to specify that, I want to go to some location, and then in that I want to go to some subdirectory and some subdirectory and some subdirectory, and then eventually you get to the file that you actually want to work with. So again, in any command-driven system or any scripting system, you're going to have to go through this sort of process where when you want to work with a file or work with a directory, you have to specify where to find it and the name of the thing that you want to work on. So specifically, we want to take a look at this in the context of Linux, since that's what we're working with right now. And in Linux, we can either express things as an absolute path, so where you find it from the root of the file system, the top level of the file system, either an absolute path from the root of the file system, or a relative path where you express where this thing is relative to where you are currently working in the file system. So we just want to go through and take a look at a couple of examples of these things. So let's take a look here. If I go through and I say I want to look at what's in directory CSCI 330, it assumes by default that I'm talking about a relative path. So it's going to look in the current directory that I'm in for something called CSCI 330 and show me what's in that. So right now there is no CSCI 330 in my current location. Let's go to my home directory and try that again. Okay, so from my home directory, when I'm in my home directory, it can actually find CSCI 330 and show me the contents of it. So relative paths work from where you are right now. Absolute paths work from the root of the file system. So I want to talk a little bit about the root of the file system and absolute paths for a second. So the root of the file system is expressed by this slash symbol. So if I want to see what's in the root, or I want to go to the root, I just use that as the name of my target directory. So let's take a look at that. So if I say, let's show what's there first. Show what's in the root of the file system. And this goes off and says, in the root of the file system, there's a bin directory, a home directory, a whole bunch of other stuff. If I want to go there, I quite happily can. Right? Let's go to the root of the file system. And again, you can have a look around at what's there. I can look at something that's in there. And again, if I do an ls home now, it's saying, well, I'm in the root. Let's look in the home directory inside the root. And again, it shows me what's in there. And I can quite happily chain these things together and say, from where I am now, I want to go into the home directory, and from there I want to go into the student directory, and from there I want to go into my directory. Again, relative paths or absolute paths, whether I express something from the root of the system or from where I am right now. Now, if you ever want to see where you are right now as an absolute path, print working directory, pwd, shows you exactly where you are in the file system. So it says from the root, go to home, go to student, go to DaveStew, and that's where you are right now. So we can use absolute paths or relative paths to express things. So it's worth having a bit of an explore of the file system, get used to how things are laid out. Eventually this will become important, but for now it's just a familiarity thing. Now, in terms of relative paths, when you're talking about how to find something relative to where you are right now, Bash, our command interpreter, gives us a couple of shortcuts. And the first one we'll talk about is this tilde symbol. So the tilde is essentially a shortcut for somebody's home directory. If you use the tilde by itself, then it's the shortcut for your home directory. So let's say, where are we here? Let's say I go into my CSCI 330 directory for a moment. So if you notice over here, it's saying I'm in my home directory, the tilde, and then I'm in CSCI 330. If I say something like ls tilde, it's saying, okay, show what's in my home directory. You can throw a username after that, so I can say what's in Dave Stew's home directory. And again, as long as you've got access permission for that particular directory, it'll show you the contents. If I want to say, let's go to my home directory slash CSCI 330 slash lab1, I can quite happily do that. Right? So it gives you a different way of expressing where something is, how you want to access something. Or if I want to jump to my home, well, let's say I want to jump to Dave Stew's home directory, and from there into Dave Stew's 265 directory. As long as it's a valid path, you can get there. Oh, nothing in that one. So we've got relative paths, absolute paths, and we've got the tilde as one of the available shortcuts. If we want to go through anything else, if it doesn't begin with the slash to indicate it starts at the root, when it doesn't begin with a tilde indicating that it starts in somebody's home directory, then it assumes that you're talking about follow a chain starting from the directory that you're in right now. So again, that's a little bit of what we've played with here. A couple of other useful tidbits are the dot and the dot dot. So dot is shorthand for the directory that you're in right now. So if I say something like ls dot, no, there's nothing in the directory I'm in right now. Let's go to my home directory. ls dot, again, that's a shorthand for the directory I'm in right now. The dot dot is a shorthand for, and I'm not actually showing you the commands here, am I? So an ls dot shows you what's in the current directory. That was from my 265, nothing there. Or the ls dot in my home directory shows you what's in my home directory. So again, anytime I go someplace, CSCI 330, if I do the ls dot, it shows me what's there. Or if we, let's go back up a level here. If I do something like an ls CSCI 330 slash dot, it's saying, okay, go into CSCI 330 and refer to the contents of the dot directory, that particular directory. So actually, if you do an ls-a, it shows you all the files in your directory, including the hidden ones. So it'll show you dot and dot dot, that we'll talk about in a second, as some of the available directories. So we've talked about dot, just the directory that we're in right now. Dot dot is the parent directory of whichever one we're in right now. So if I go into my, let's say CSCI 330 slash lab1, then dot dot is my 330 directory, or I can say dot dot slash dot dot, oops. So we're saying go up one level and then up another level. So in theory, that should be talking about my home directory. And so you can use these dot dots to express paths to things. Or if I want to show what's in my 265 directory, I could say, well, I want to go up one into my 330 directory, and up another one into my home directory, and then into 265 and show what's there. And so you can use the dots and the dot dots as, again, just ways to express paths. So it's worth spending some time to get familiar with paths. We're going to be doing a lot of work with them over the course of your degree. As soon as you start getting into scripting, you have to be able to specify and you have to be able to explore the directory system based on the use of these absolute and relative paths. And when you're writing programs that work for other people, they're going to be expressing paths using relative paths and absolute paths, and your programs, your scripts, are going to have to be able to work with those as well. So just something to experiment with. We'll continue on with a bunch of other features of Linux in the next couple of sessions.